Chris and Mary, thanks very much for coming on. How are we?
Good.
Good. Yeah,
really
considering.
good.
Yeah, all good.
Good. So why don't you guys just take the floor for 5 minutes or so, tell us who you are, what you're all about, and what you're doing.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, Mary?
I'm Mary Selwood, and I am a professional property investor, but I haven't always been. I was a nurse for 27 years in the health service, and I left it 3.5 years ago. I'm in a little bit of a quandary at the moment. I've been called up again. I'm supposed to go for training next week. My heart's telling me yes, but my head's saying no.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the decision I'm going to have to make. We've been investing in property since 2005. We started off as investing for a pension for Chris, so we bought a little 2-bedroom house in Ballymena, and we're very scared initially buying our first house. Had all the what ifs before we bought our first house, and then when we bought it, it wasn't as bad. The what ifs didn't turn out to be what ifs.
Well, the demand was great.
Yeah, it was good.
I think at the time we said we should have bought two because the demand was so good, but that was those times.
So that just kick-started us buying property. And then what followed that, then we bought a lot of property in Ballymena, and then we bought some property across in the northeast of England, and then the recession came. So that slowed everything down. We didn't buy in the recession. We bought coming out of the recession when everyone else wasn't buying. So when property was dirt cheap, we started buying again. So I don't know why we were clever enough, or someone was looking down on us, telling us not to do that.
I don't think it was it luck or judgment?
I don't know.
Maybe a little bit of both. I think
Maybe.
at the time we couldn't understand why nobody else wanted to buy cheap property.
Yeah.
And when I heard someone saying, "Oh, now's not the right time to buy property," I thought, well, if it's not the right time to buy property when you're buying 2- and 3-bed terraces for 30 grand, when is the right time to buy property?
So we started buying property again, but we just love property, and I think property has enabled me to give up my job. So the income from property provides me with an income, so I don't need my nursing income. And because I love property and I love helping people invest in property, and I love helping them on their journey. And that has led me to helping people and coaching people invest in property. So that's kind of me.
So I'm Chris Selwood, obviously Mary's husband. I was in the Merchant Navy from about 1998 to about 2009, late 2009. I'd worked in different shipping companies. As Mary said, we started investing for a pension because I had worked for like Seacat, Stena P&O, Northern Marine. I'd worked for these different companies and just tended to go where their jobs were. Sometimes it was seasonal, and then ended up working in shipyards, during dry dock period and refurbishment period for the boats in the winter time. And then when I got a permanent job, by the time I got a permanent job that I thought I might stay and could have paid into a pension, that was the time when I was starting to think, I want to get out of this and I want to do something else. Property was a way to do that. As Mary said, we started investing for a pension, bought a few around Ballymena, bought in the northeast of England. It was all going pretty well, and then the crash happened. And I decided at that time that I wanted to give up. We'd spent a bit of money on education just around about the time, or coincided with the time that I was giving up. So we'd invested a lot of money. We'd invested a lot of money in education, and then the interest rates started to fall quite quickly. So we ended up with more cash flow from our properties, which meant I had enough money then to give up work. So I took the plunge first, and then I was trying to encourage Mary to do it. She sort of dropped her hours slowly but surely over the next few years. So started Belfast Property Meet in 2011 because we'd done the training, came back from England,
Yeah.
And when we had all this training behind it, we had the knowledge, but we'd no sort of support network.
Yeah.
There was nobody to sort of make us accountable. We tried a little get together with a few people, but it didn't last. And then we decided to start a meeting. And we went through some tough times with that. And then it just sort of grew and grew and grew. The last 3.5 years, it's probably just sort of, gone through. We're starting to get, quite good numbers, like over 100 people every month. We've had 140 something in the room a couple of months ago. So yeah, that's where we are. We do a bit of online training via Property Success University, and we're trying to build on that. So plenty to keep us busy.
Yeah, and I was speaking to Paul Magee last week, and he said you got 86 people on for the online Zoom for the property meet. Is that?
Yeah, 89 I think it was at one time. I mean, there was people dropping in and out, but we actually had 180 sign up, so about half of them showed up, just under half of them showed up, 90 say.
But following that, we've had how many downloads?
Yeah, we recorded the online meeting and made it available. So I sent out an email to everybody, and there's a link to download it, and we've had over 100 people download it. So we've had nearly the same amount of people have clicked on it, and then about more than half the people that have clicked on it have actually downloaded it. So I know a lot of people who didn't watch it have downloaded it, and hopefully a lot of people who that maybe weren't on that night have downloaded it. Maybe some of the people that were on, they've already watched it, they'll not watch it again. I don't know, but anyway, we've had a good response. So we're going to do the same next month, and we'll do the same until we get back to normal. Running live events. So.
Brilliant. And I was just because I know you guys have mentored me in the past and helped me buy my first property, which is there's still challenges going on there, but it's just due to the current climate. But luckily enough, the whole plan for us was to flip that one, but I think we're going to have to rent it out because we just don't know what's going to happen. But if anybody was getting into property right now, because it's a huge interest for me, anything business related or anything creative is a huge interest to me in terms of business. So what would you say to somebody who's getting into property right now or thinking about getting into property?
Well, I think now will be a good time to get into property because there are going to be opportunities. When we come out of this, let's say in the next couple of months, if we're lockdown's gone, solicitors are back to work, the land registry's up and running, estate agents are able to open, surveyors are able to go out, mortgage brokers are going to be practicing again as normal rather than from home. So a lot of that stuff will kind of get back to normal. There will be opportunities because I think a lot of people sort of traditional investors are going to go, I've had enough of this. There's too much uncertainty here. For years and years, there's been a lot of certainty. Even the last crash, they were okay, but never before have they maybe had a problem trying to actually rent somewhere. And at the minute, unless you're renting to somebody that's wanting to self-isolate or somebody that's maybe working as a key worker, it's going to be tough because you can't just go and do viewings with any Tom, Dick and Harry at the minute. So that'll have an impact on a lot of people. I think from a property investment point of view, the first time buyer market might take a wee bit of a hit because a lot of people that have been saving up for deposits might be eating into their deposits to try and get them by at the minute. I don't know, but I'm assuming that'll be the case. Therefore, if they're not buying, other people are not getting rid of their property, they're not being able to move up. So that sort of sale, the selling side of thing, that chain will sort of break down a little bit, and that's going to create more opportunities because people are still going to want to sell. There just might not be as many people out there buying.
It creates a rental market.
It creates a demand on the rental market. Those people that were going to rent that maybe decided that they're going to buy are going to have to stay renting for a little while to save up to top up that deposit account again for the next 6-12 months. I don't know, but I do think there'll be an impact. There will definitely be opportunities. There's always opportunities in recession. And I mean, the chances are we're going to go into recession because the government are having to spend a lot of this money. The economy's losing across the UK. Well, Northern Ireland in particular, they're saying we're losing 48 million quid a day. Across the UK, it's 2.4 billion. the economies being impacted by. So, I mean, if that goes on for 3 or 4 months, that's a lot of billions. And for a small place like Northern Ireland, it's a lot of millions.
Yeah.
You know, but 50 million, just under 50 million a day, times 30, what's 1.5 billion, you know, over a month.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a small place like this. So it's going to have an impact. The difference for me being compared to the last recession, the last property crash, is the banks still have money this time. Now it's their turn to help us. So I think when this is all done and dusted and we're getting back to some level of normality, whatever that happens to be, the banks will still have money, and they're going to need to try and make money, because they'll have lost a wee bit of money from not being active over these few months. So they're going to have to try and get that back. So whether they put more money into the pot to lend out, maybe change their interest rates slightly. Interest rates again have fallen, so that presents more opportunities. Borrowing is going to be cheaper. So I think for investors, anybody thinking about it,
yeah,
I would be obviously hang on for the next month or so, but definitely, you know, look at the opportunities that are going to present themselves.
Yeah. I was reading something a couple of weeks ago. Now I'm not sure if this is true. Maybe you guys will know better than me. But it was whenever everything started to happen, the banks were trying to set crazy terms, and the government stepped in and they were like, no, you guys are here to help. You're not here to take advantage. Is that something, or is that just hearsay that I read online?
No, I think so. I think they were kind of, what did they call it? Corona interruption loans or something like that. I think the banks were maybe trying to dictate the terms, and banks being banks, they spot an opportunity to make money. Whereas the government are saying, no, we're going to ring fence this. If you want us to ring fence 80% of a loan, it may have been up to 5 million or something like that. We'll ring fence that, guarantee that. But this is the terms under which we'll guarantee that. Then the banks have to go, okay, well, if we want really secure loans or 80% of it guaranteed, we're going to have to operate under these conditions. So I think they have changed their criteria. I think they had said for the first 12 months it would be interest free.
Yeah, I think all the coronavirus loans are interest free.
Yeah,
but
coronavirus interruption loans or something like business interruption loans or something.
They're really difficult to get though. They're not. It's not as easy as whenever they started releasing about the self-employed and the furlough, and then they said the interruption loan is there, it's available as well, but it's not easy to get from what I've heard.
Well, I think the idea was that you would still have to qualify for a loan under normal circumstances. So if you're running a business, and a lot of people self-employed, maybe impacted by the last recession, their credit rating is still not the best, they maybe wouldn't qualify for a business loan under normal circumstances. Whether the banks are being a little bit more lenient, I'm not quite sure, but you would expect them to be. You know, I going back to what I said, it was the taxpayer that helped them out the last time, helped the banks out, and I think it's the time for the banks to help out the taxpayers this time. So, you know what banks like.
I was going to go for one myself, but see, to tell you the truth, I think we're just after cutting personal expenses and having a real good look at what we were spending money on within the business. Like, I couldn't believe how little our actual fixed outgoings were. But bar the finance payments and the software payments and things like that, there was literally and diesel, staff, but most of our expenses were within our control. So once I actually really had a good look at that, what I'd done was like, I think we're just going to try and grin and bear it instead of having to get the interruption loan. We can push through it. Most of the spending is well within our control. The equipment and things like marketing. We just have to be a bit more creative now. But it was crazy whenever you actually look at it, how little your expenses can be. So we didn't really need the loan. I think everybody panicked and was like, we need to get this loan. But when I seen what they were looking to qualify, it was, you needed a business plan, you need to have invoices that weren't being paid, and you need to have proof of business afterwards as well. So there was a lot of hoops you had to jump through, which we had all those things, but I just sort of looked at the numbers and thought to myself, I think we'll just leave it as it is for now.
Yeah,
that's
I think
great.
if you can afford to do that, I think it's not a bad idea, because when you come out the other side, if you've taken all these mortgage holidays, you're going to have all that stuff to go and set up again, and maybe if they're cancelling direct debits, I don't know whether they're cancelling them or freezing them or whether you have to do anything, but you would imagine at some point, if you put all these things in place to stop payments for different things, you're going to have to go and introduce a lot of that stuff again. So there's a bit of work. If you can if you can carry on doing what you're doing, then you're going to save yourself at least a little bit of hassle at the back end. From a mortgage point of view, I think we get a mortgage holiday on one, and that was because we could do it online, and it was like a couple of clicks of a button, and it was done. The rest of them haven't given us that option to do it online, not yet anyway. And I thought I just don't want to be wasting time at the minute on the phone for 3 or 4 hours with each and we've got mortgages with like 5 or 6 different banks, some a couple with each of those, but I don't want to be sitting on the phone for 3 or 4 hours losing the will to live to try and get £100 interest only payment for the next 3 months, because
we're getting rent, so why should we ask for a mortgage holiday? So it'd be different if we weren't getting rents. I think that'd be a different situation, but we're quite lucky. We've got several businesses, so we've multiple streams of income, and I think that's one thing to take for everyone to take out of this situation.
100%.
Unless you are on the front line, unless you are a service, in the services, whether it's medical, fire, police, on the front line, that people need to be looking at themselves and need to be looking at multiple streams of income. For us, we've got Mid-Antrim Properties as a small rental agency. I'm very lucky. Both of us are very lucky that I would say we manage about 90 properties, and I would say out of the 90, I've just had problems with one. So, and in order to pay the rent, but that's not saying she's been furloughed and she hasn't been paid. She's not being paid by her employer. He's dragging it out until he gets money. But in general, 89 people to pay rent at this time is pretty good. That's Mid-Antrim Properties. Regarding then our service accommodation business is taking action
early enough.
Early, and switching the nightly stays to monthly stays. Okay, out of the 15, there's probably 3 that isn't occupied at the moment. But that's one of owner's personal choice, and the other 2 I'm working on it. Regarding Belfast Property Meet, we decided to go online with it so that people are still getting their fears and their anxieties and their uncertainty and the help and support. And then with our PSU guys, our members, they're amazing people that they're getting the help and support. Usually we do it twice a month. Now we're doing it every week for them. So it's just taking action and just switching things, just making changes so that your business is still working as best as possible.
Well, it's kind of like a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Whereas unfortunately most people have a plan A, and if it doesn't work, then they're scuppered. So it's as Mary said, it's trying to look at having several streams of income coming in, whether it's even you're selling a few things online, even selling other people's products online. At least you've got if
something doesn't work, something else is going to work for you at that time. And say service accommodation isn't working at the moment for people, they have to switch. They have to put it either into monthly rents or 6 monthly rents or 12 monthly rents. If someone they have to make that decision and make it quite quickly. But it's great that you have the choice and you have the strategies to put in place in order to make that happen.
I think what Mary says there, but you have to make the decision quickly. I think sometimes making no decision can be worse than making a wrong decision.
Absolutely. Just sitting, one of the things that I've been looking at, I'm friends with a lot of people in my industry, the removals industry, people over in England and stuff, and I just see everybody's posting beers in their back gardens and all that sort of stuff, and that gives me great confidence because we're working really hard behind the scenes to go hard when we get back. And you have to switch your strategies up, your marketing, and find a new way for lead generation, because at the end of the day, people are going to, whenever they come back, they're going to be looking, I think they're going to be more careful about where they spend their money, especially when it comes to moving house. And I think a lot of subpar businesses are going to fall away as well. You know, a lot of guys who are maybe in my industry who are working for cash and they're kind of off the radar are just going to drop away completely because they've nothing there.
Well, this thing here, just picking up on something you said there, this whole thing that's happening, could it drive us quicker towards a cashless society? Because at the minute, you know, everybody's wanting you to pay online or over the phone by card. And I think this is us taking a step closer to a completely cashless society. So yeah, you're right. All those people that are just working for cash are going to be driven out, because we're getting closer to having no cash.
Because they've got no books either. You know, even if they are self-employed, or you know, maybe they're doing the double. I don't know, whatever they're doing. But if they're self-employed and they're mostly cash and they're not putting anything through, they've no profit there.
Yeah.
You know, if they're not going to be entitled to much. So they're in a bad position now with people still out working because they've no other choice. Luckily enough, sort of 12 months, you know, after working with a few guys, and we made a few good moves in terms of financial, and we've been okay. But if maybe we hadn't made those moves and we were still doing what we were doing, it could have been a different story.
It's interesting you say that, because the typical thing for self-employed people to do is to keep the expenses high and the income down. Like, well, when I say income, I mean the profit. So keep the profit down. So you know, especially in the first few years where you try to not pay as much tax as maybe you should. That's the right way to say it. But unfortunately, it's coming back to bite people in the bum. You know, you're finding like all the self-employed people out there that have been earning just over the tax allowance for the last number of years, and all of a sudden now they're getting 80% of the tax allowance, which is giving them 800 quid a month instead of maybe twice that amount. You know, it sort of swings and roundabouts, but you can't have your cake and eat it, as they say.
I wanted to ask you, I know, like, because you guys obviously teach a lot of creative strategies in terms of property, the scale up of property businesses or a business, but I was just thinking about rent to service accommodation. How is that working? Well, obviously it's not working for people, so how is that going to affect them if they have no business but they've still got the huge outgoing of a rental payment?
Well, I know somebody that has probably 8 rents on service accommodation, and he was very proactive, very, very proactive. He, number one, contacted his landlord or owner. One of them is 3 units in one block. That landlord wasn't that moving on the yearly rent.
Right.
There was really no movement. He was just stubborn and stuck his heels in and decided, no, what we agreed is what I want. The second landlord is on a block of 5. He was very accommodating, so a discount was given there on the rent, and then that person switched them very quickly to short-term rent lets, so monthly to 6 monthly lets.
And is that still profitable for them, or is that just breaking?
Well, he did his sums, so he did his calculations, knew what margins was in it for him. It's nothing on this scale of what it was. But he's still making enough. So it was just it was a decision. He knew he had to meet his landlord's rental demands. So the rent he's getting some money as well himself, but not on the scale he would as if it was service now. But he's happy with.
Sorry, go ahead.
He's happy with that. He's happy with that. Yeah.
How long do you think it'll be before that market picks up again?
I think the service market, I think prior to this, it was oversaturated. It was Just every man and their dog was doing it. And something had to happen, whether it was planning coming into force, regulations coming into force, whatever, something had to happen in the market. This has quickened up the market for something happening. I think people have converted back into long-term lets, and I don't see them switching back again to serviced.
Yeah, yeah.
Too much uncertainty,
Too
I think,
much
for a lot of
uncertainty.
people.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of how will the market change, it depends how back to normal we get and how soon, whatever back to normal is. You know, if the lockdown disappears, I think if the lockdown stops, that doesn't mean we just go out and go out of business. I think once we're allowed to go out and about, there'll still be maybe some restrictions on people gathering over maybe 10 or whatever, or over 20 people. I'm not quite sure. But there'll still be some restrictions. Football games might be played behind closed doors. Events might be played, you know, certain events might not be allowed to go ahead. You know, but in terms of holiday lets, I think people will still be scared maybe to go to Spain or to go to Italy or some of these places that have been affected, or maybe even across the water. I don't know. So I think a lot of people who have been stuck in will think, I need to go somewhere. So I think once we do get back to, we're able to rent out properties, you know, for a family or whatever, for short term, that I think we'll end up with a busy summer. Should we get started again for the summer, I think the demand will definitely be there, and maybe even later into September and October, because whether people are using up their leave, I don't know. I would imagine if staff are being furloughed, that they're not using up their annual leave, so they're going to have a lot of annual leave left over when we get back to whatever normal is, and therefore they're going to want to go somewhere. So that could be a few nights in Belfast, or a night here, a night there, maybe a week in Portrush, Newcastle, Port Stewart, wherever people are happen to be going. So I think we'll end up getting a lot of local people booking the holiday lets, so we should do okay once we get back to normal. And as Mary said, that it'll act as a bit of a cull on service accommodation, because there's way too many people doing it.
Yeah. I was actually just speaking to my guys this morning, but before this, you know, the couple of guys that work for me. I mean, you know, when the bars open again, for whatever time that's going to be, see when people in Northern Ireland get a big lump sum payment into their account, you know, self-employed, you know, whether it's 4 or 6 grand, you know what's going to happen. The town's going to be crazy. The holidays are going to be booked, and that's what people are going to spend it on, because see, as soon as you get a lump sum payment into your account, all financial education will go out the window for a lot of people, and just they're not going to think about the previous 3 months. They're going to go, right, I've got X amount of thousands, let's go and spend it.
I mean,
I need a treat.
Yeah, in normal circumstances.
I know, I need a treat after 3 months off.
Yeah, but that's it. In normal circumstances,
in
normal circumstances, most people would blow it rather than invest it.
I don't
but
think.
I think there'll be even more people now. I'll go. I've had, you know, I've been locked down for 3 months, or I haven't really been to the pub for 3 months, or whatever. Haven't been out anywhere for 3 months. I'm going on a
bender.
On a bender.
Yeah.
On a spending spree, whatever.
Whatever they decide.
Yeah, that's just how people think here. I just can't see, as soon as the bars open again, I think they're going to be insane. For the first few weeks, especially if the weather's like that.
When you think about it, Chris, if you really think about it, if you're a first-time buyer, you need 5% to buy your first house.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's going to get a lump sum. That lump sum could be enough for your deposit for your first house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if people were thinking like that, but they're not. People don't think like that.
What do you think?
Unfortunately, a lot of people are living month to month here. You know, that's saying there's too much month left at the end of the money, and people might have to borrow. So some people, they get the lump sum, they might have to pay it back. But there are going to be people out there that will survive on next to nothing, really. You know, especially if they get their mortgage payments deferred, or a holiday or whatever, car payments, etc., etc. You know, you can live on not a lot, just food and heat and electric. I mean, even the heat's off at the minute, but you know, so some of those people may be able to do it, and others might just go ahead and blow it.
Yeah. And for anybody, I know you mentioned obviously first-time buyers there, Mary. I'm just thinking, for anybody who's thinking about investing in property, and maybe they will get a lump sum and they're maybe thinking about investing, do you think that model of saving up, buy to let, saving up, buy to let, is that still working, or are there other things that people could be thinking about right now?
Well, if you're starting off in property, you need to you have to own a property in order to buy your first investment property.
So you have to be a homeowner.
So you have to be a homeowner.
Right.
Regarding you, if you are a homeowner and you want to buy an investment property, you have to be a little bit educated, or a little bit of knowledge in order to either being able to buy below market value, which you're building in equity, or number two, you're buying a property that needs work done to it, so you're adding value to it. So that's what I would be saying to people, that they are looking for a property that they're either going to buy below market value, and I think there will be properties, that will be available once this lockdown is lifted, or there'll be properties that you can add value to it. So you're using that model of buying a property, adding value, either flipping it all or refinancing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where education comes into it. Not everyone thinks like that, but that's what I would be advising people to do.
And without getting into it in any great detail, there's lots of creative strategies that you can use as well, where somebody's looking to offload a house. There may be a little bit of negative equity, but you can take on the house on a legal agreement over a longer period of time, so that the house rises and gets back into positive equity, and then you benefit from that in the future. But you might still be able to make a couple of pound cash flow out of it each month until you make your lump sum in the future. But that's for another day, But there are a lot of creative strategies out there that you can use as well.
Yeah, I've got to say the education part that you mentioned is so important. If I wasn't going to property meet and learning from the people within PSU, there's no way that we would have got the deal that we got on our first investment property. And because you were educated, because you knew how to do your market research and you knew how to speak to people, it's a completely different ballgame when you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But for anybody who is out there who's listening, education is critical. Get yourselves down to the property meet and get networking with people, because they'll be able to help you if that is your goal. To anybody who's sitting on money now, I think is a great time to start investing. I think if we had more money for the business account, I think we would be tripling down on marketing right now. If that was
I think in general, people will hear some things on, there's going to be a property crash. That may or may not happen in Northern Ireland, but it may be slightly different here than it is, say, in London. And the reason why I think that is because if the banks are still continuing to lend, it's all about demand. And I mean, if there's not a big demand for property in London because it's a lot more expensive, I know people say, oh yeah, but it's more expensive to rent, but the returns are not as great. Like you buy £1 million property in London and rent it for £2,000 per month. What's that? 24 grand a year. That's 2.4%. Now, okay, it might be a little bit more than that. Might be 3 grand a month, 3.6%. But over here, you could buy £100,000 house and rent it for £700 a month or £650. I mean, that's twice as much of a yield that you would get if you were in London. Okay, I know you have some other, like council tax or rates that we have to pay over here, but it's very cheap. And then repairs and maintenance and all might be cheaper here than it is in London. So I think Northern Ireland is at an advantage where there's still going to be a demand for property. Property's still cheap enough, it's still affordable, and the rental market's still affordable for people too. So there's still going to be a demand for renting as well. But again, going back to what you said, it is key that people get the education and not listen to a lot of the scare tactics that are sort of general across the whole of the UK. Belfast, Northern Ireland is still an area where you can still make money from property. I mean, interest rates are just a touch over 2% at the minute. So if you're borrowing 75,000 out of a £100,000 property, I don't know, it's probably going to be somewhere around about 130, 100, maybe 150 pound a month on an interest only mortgage. You know, that's cheap as chips. If you're paying 150 plus rates and insurance and a little bit for maintenance, you're still going to be cash flowing 300 pound plus per month.
That's really good.
That's quite good. When we first started investing back in 2005, if we were making over 100 pound a month, we thought it was a good deal. Interest rates were twice as much, actually more than twice as much. Interest rates were 5.5%.
Yeah.
The Bank of England base rate was 5.5% when we started investing, and we thought, oh, that's not as bad as it had been, which because it had been up at 14%, 15% back in the previous recession.
Yeah,
So,
I remember speaking to my dad about that, and I was talking about the house we bought years ago when I was a kid, down in, it was over in sort of southeast Belfast, and he was telling me interest rates were at 13, 14%. It was, the mortgages were crazy.
yeah,
But,
yeah. So
it's such a good time to buy. It really is. And there's a rental market for every type of person, you know, and there's someone for every house. It's weird, but you know, I have a wee house out in the middle of nowhere. It's a little cottage, and I think, who would really want to live there? But people do.
I mean, the nearest shop's about 3 miles away. You know, so one of those where people think I want to live in the countryside, but people don't realise when you go to live in the countryside, when you have to drive 3 miles to the shop every day, you start getting fed up with it. You know, it's it's not convenient enough. There's a lot of good things with living in the country, but that's not one of them. And yet we still, you think, oh, we're going to have no one interested, but you maybe have 6 to 10 people that are inquiring about it. Which is as Mary said, there is a demand.
There's someone for every property, some type of person for every property.
That's what I love about my place. It's like the perfect balance between convenience and quiet.
Yeah. So I just think there's so many reasons why people should invest in property. Low interest rates, so many strategies you can put in place. There's a demand for every property, you know. I just think you can make money in property, whether it's a cash flow or whether it's a capital growth or a mixture of both.
Even the shared accommodation, you know, like people would have thought upon the student market. The student market's not something that we would encourage anybody to get in because they're hard to manage. They're hard to manage, students. But there is. There is like the young professionals that are looking to, you know, because there's a lot of highly skilled, highly paid jobs in Belfast, like IT jobs and pharmaceutical jobs and banks and stuff. And they're maybe not at the point where they've decided to stay to buy a house, that they just want to share property and, you know,
live nice.
You know, so if you're providing decent quality accommodation, that market where it used to be like 200 to 250 pound a month for a room, which were dingy for students, you're now up to sort of 350 to 400 pound a month. And if you can provide an ensuite, maybe you're getting more. So, you know, that market's changed as well, and there is a demand for it as well.
I know for myself, you know, if I was working away in Australia, like I was a few years ago, and you were earning, and you had the opportunity to have a really high quality room with Wi-Fi and a TV in the room, and you were paying a little bit more per week or per month. I know for me, because I know it's only temporary, maybe that I'm going to be there, that I would definitely take it, because you know it's going to be cheaper than a house, but you know you're kind of going to go out, you have your own space in your room. So I think there's a lot of people in the PSU that are doing that sort of thing, and as far as I know, with great success. Well, and
one of the good things about it is, you know, if you have 5 rooms and you have 4 of them rented out and one's empty for a month, you're still making some decent money. You know, if you have a single family let and it's not rented, there's no money coming in. At least when you break it down into 4 or 5 rooms, you know, 2 rooms will probably cover all the bills and the other 3's profit. So if you've got out of the 3 rooms that are profit, 2 of them are occupied and one's not, you're still making profit, you know. So it's you know, as I say, there's definitely a demand for that. There's definitely a demand for family units. There's definitely a demand if you're buying, fixing up and putting back on the market, because there's still people looking to buy. That may change a little bit, but as Mary said, and you've said, people get a lump sum, all of a sudden they've got their 5% for a deposit for a house, and we still want to buy our own house. Nobody sets out with the intention of renting for the rest of their lives.
Well, not in this country. Not
No.
in Ireland.
You know,
or
the UK and Ireland, and maybe America, Canada, you know, those sort of English-speaking countries, Australia, New Zealand, most people want to buy a property that's sort of a man's house is his castle, whatever the term is. Whereas in countries like Germany, people have no intention. A lot of people, you know, Sweden, they have no intentions of ever buying their own house. They're just, it's quite the norm to actually want to rent. And unfortunately, there the rental demand is high, but there's that many rental properties that the rents are not very good. Whereas here we've got a bit of the best of both worlds, if you like.
Yeah. Just with everything going on, I wanted to ask this. With everything going on in the stock market at the minute, what is the benefit for somebody who wants to invest in property rather than the stock market?
Oh.
Well,
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have some strong feelings about this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the stock market. If I was going to invest in markets, I had to learn about investing in the stock market or any other market. I'd invest in the currency market. One is because currency's always got a value. If you invest in and it goes up and down, and some people win and some people lose, but you know,
there's a need for it.
Yeah, there is a need for it. You know, the pound doesn't become worth anything. You know, it doesn't all of a sudden overnight the pound's worth zero. It goes up and down a little bit. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. Whereas in the stock market, companies go out of business. You know, you can buy stock in a company and the company crashes, and you buy £1,000 worth of shares in Joe Soap Limited and Joe Soap Company, and Joe Soap goes bust. Well, your shares are worth nothing. So it's a dangerous market. I have some shares through an investment club that I go to, but I rely on other people's knowledge, and we've actually done quite well out of it. The returns are not huge, but you know, got in for £4,000. It's worth over £5,000 now. We've had several dividend payments over the last few years, but that's not from any skills or knowledge I have. I'm just sitting there and I'm going along for the ride, as you say. But the stock market's volatile. You know, a lot of people now whose pensions are linked to the stock market. I mean, a couple of our PSU members have said their pensions have fallen in value by 20% because they're reliant on the stock market. So when it goes up and down, so does the value of your pension. Don't get me wrong, there are people out there that are making lots of money from doing it, but it's risky for me. Why I like property is because, you know, you're buying a property in Belfast for 100,000. You can go to the bank and say, "Can I borrow 75 or 80,000?" And they'll go, "Okay," and we'll send the guy out, and he comes back and he goes, "Yes, this is worth 100,000." You know, so the valuer will say, "Yeah, that's okay." They'll lend you 80,000. If you went to the banks and said, I want to buy 100 grand's worth of shares. I've got 20 grand deposit or 25 grand deposit. Will you lend me the other 75? The only thing they'll show you is the door, you know. Or I want to invest in the currency markets, or I want to invest in fine wines or gold, art or gold or whatever. You know, it's property has just got that uniqueness about it, where it's a tangible asset. You can touch it and feel it, and you can smell it. You can make money from it month after month after month. It tends to, over the years, the stock market does too, over the years it goes up, but it's got these major blips all the time. The property market tends to have cycles, not like the stock market goes up and down every few years, you know, a bull market and a bear market. Whereas the property market maybe sort of stagnates for a little while, but it always seems to continue in an upward curve. Then you have a bit of a drop, and then it starts to pick up again. And if you drew a line from 1973, I think, when Halifax / Nationwide started doing their property price indexes, if you drew a line from there, from 1973 up to 2020, you would see that property on average doubles about every 10 years, and that's allowing for the crash. Now, people might say, "Oh, but it wouldn't double from 2007 to 2017. No,
that's different.
No, but it probably doubled from the year 2000 it doubled and doubled again in about 7 years.
Yeah.
But, you know, on average, every 10 years or so, property prices will double. So if you're going to get into property nowadays, over the next 30 years, you will at least see the value of the property double at least once and possibly twice.
Yeah.
Do you think, Chris, maybe your family, or your parents, the first house they bought, how much was it? 5,000, 10,000?
I think as far as I remember, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was like 13 grand. Or
Okay.
maybe it was a bit
And
more.
in today's value, how much would that be? That house?
I have no idea. In today's
Well,
value,
Yeah.
my mum and my stepdad.
Over 100,000 anyway.
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
So that just goes to tell you, you know, how many years ago would that be?
I think
25?
I think that was, I think they bought their first house in 1987 or 88, and then they bought the second one in 1990 or 91. It was
Okay.
when we moved when I was like a baby, so that
Yeah.
was 1990. So as far as I'm aware, that's
Well, my mum and stepdad bought a house, a 4-bedroom terraced house, and we actually own a house a couple of doors up the street from it now. But they bought that back in 1989, 1990, 16,000. So by 2000, it would have to be worth 32,000 for it to have doubled. By 2010, 64,000. It was actually around about 2006. The same houses were going for 160,000, and then they were back down to they were going for about 50,000. But by 2010, they were around about 50,000. But now in 2020, they're worth about 80 to 90,000.
yeah.
So you can see across that 16 to 32 to 64, they've at least doubled twice in that period of time, maybe 2.5 times.
Yeah.
So over the long term, property definitely goes up in price.
I was actually reading a book about a year ago, and he basically just trumped that whole thing. You know, invest in the stock market, put 10% in. You know, your compound interest, you will, you know, X amount to be worth this amount in by the time you're 65. And his whole thing was, well, why the fuck would you want to? Why would you want to do it when you're 65? You kind of want to enjoy it when you're a bit younger, because at 65 you're almost too old to really enjoy it. So his thing was, his whole philosophy was like, you know, create a business or create something that's going to provide you with a lot of income. my dog just jumped up there.
Sorry, the kitchen door's open,
Yeah.
and the dogs saw another dog outside.
Mine just jumped up there as soon as he was sleeping.
Oh, its ears pricked up.
Yeah. So his whole thing was, why not, if you're going to invest in the stock market, he said about investing in property, but you know, if you create a business and you sell it for say whatever amount of millions or whatever it is, and you're better off actually putting your money into, I can't remember what kind of bond it was, but if you put say 5 million into a specific bond, you're going to get an 8% return a year, which is going to be broken down into monthly payments. And he said, instead of putting, you know, 10% of that in, put the full or most of the full amount in, and then you're going to get the passive income from that anyway.
Yeah.
He said that's the better way to invest in the stock market. Put a lump sum in and get the monthly dividend.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. For me, I don't understand the stock market enough, and I sort of think I'm putting my money in the hands of somebody else to try and make money for me. I'd rather try and control it myself. I get stung with a boiler room scam a few years back. I can't remember the name of the company. It was an oil company, and they said, "Do you want to buy some shares?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not interested." And of course, I kept an eye on them, because as soon as somebody told me, I had to keep an eye on them to see where they went, and they went up in value. So they went up in value.
The reason why everyone was putting all the money in at the one time.
Because the company that was trying to sell me the shares were actually buying their own shares to inflate the value of them. And of course, when they come back to me the next time, they said, "Oh, you didn't buy. Look, those shares were worth 50 cents. Now they're worth $2.50. And I went, "Yeah, I missed out on that." "Well, we've got another opportunity for you." Well, that was me. I was of course, sucker. So I went in 50 cents. They went up to $2.80. I remember we were on holidays in Spain, and I was looking, Mary, look at this here. They're up like my
Sell,
my
sell.
$2,000 worth of shares, which I can't remember what the dollar to the pound was at the time, was worth X amount, and now they're worth like 2.8 times that. Like, I'm making a serious profit, and I rung up and I tried to sell them, and it said under Nevada state law you can't sell them for 12 months. So of course I got up to, like, it was 11 and a half months, and they just went through the floor. So obviously the people that bought the shares to inflate the price at the beginning, they were in, their 12 months was up before they'd sold them on to everybody else. And just
Right.
as we got to the 11 and a half months, or my 11 and a half months, they then sold the shares and they went through the floor, and I lost a couple of $1,000. But so that was it. I haven't been near the stock market since, apart from as part of an investment group where I've got smarter people than myself in it to, right?
That's
But sorry, going back, I wanted to just say there, in terms of property, the good thing about property is we just explained there about it on average doubling every 10 years, but it's not, the capital growth is a bonus for me. We used to invest for capital growth, and that's what happened to a lot of people, why they get their fingers burnt and crash.
cash flow's king.
Cash flow is king. I mean,
You know that in your business.
we're seeing it now. Business people are saying cash flow is king. And you know, if property price is going to double every 10 years, that's the bonus. Don't be relying on that. You know, people that buy and think, oh yeah, I'll use this as a pension, and they're buying property that's worth buying it at too big a price and not renting it for enough, and they've got poor returns on it. They're at the mercy of a crash to wipe out maybe 10 years of growth, as happened the last time. So I think cash flow has to be the number one reason. You know, there's no reason why you can't, if you don't want the cash flow, but get the cash flow and put it in a savings thing. And when you have enough money saved up, go and buy another one. That would be what I would do, and what we've done since we learned the lessons back in 2008.
Yeah, I mean that used to cause me serious sort of stress and anxiety when there was no structure to how we managed their cash flow, and you know, you were still getting money in and you were still getting yourself paid, but you were sometimes waiting. Like, there was no structure to how I was paying myself. It was just like there was no deposits, there was no this, and it was just all over the place. And you were waiting. Sometimes your bank account was running really low, like dangerously low, as in, you know, probably less than 100 quid at one stage. And then all of a sudden you were getting these big lump sum payments, but you didn't know when they were coming in. And you were dealing with sometimes businesses, and it could be a bit more difficult because of their payment terms and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, managing the cash flow and getting cash flow right in any business is absolutely critical. Once you've got some sort of structure in place for it, it can be far more beneficial to you.
Yeah, I mean, just what you said earlier about, you know, when people get a lump sum, they go and spend it, and a lot of businesses do the same. You know, they get a big job and they get a big payday, and they have to go and, oh, I'll go and buy more vans or more tools, or invest in a lot of advertising. It's not going to work. As you say, people need to, you know, businesses need to try and keep some cash there in case things like this, because this is something that, if you'd have said 5-6 months ago, we're going to be in lockdown and nobody's going to be able to leave the house, you would have thought, that guy's mad. But all of a sudden, here we are. What did we watch? Contagion the other night. And I thought, was this film made in the last couple of weeks? You know, they made a film 10 years ago about what would happen. And, you know, it was just a pandemic. It was unreal. You just thought, you know, but back then when they made that, people thought, yeah, it's a movie. But here it is. It's really happening to us today. Yeah, I would recommend you watch it, especially during this period of uncertainty. Contagion, I think it's called. Matt Damon's in it, and a few other quite well-known people. Gwyneth Paltrow. What's her name from Titanic?
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet. Yeah. So it's.
I'll be handling that. So, the statistic that I have found, apparently only 15% of people listen to the end of a podcast episode. So what would you like to say to those 15% of people that are staying listening to us right now?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to you as well, Chris, for having us on.
I want to say one thing about this time, and Chris, it came from Chris, and it's kind of stayed in my head. Being in lockdown made us realize what we've got and how important what we've got is. Chris said, "Oh, I've got everything. What, everything I want, I've got it." So that kind of, I suppose, has hit my heart more than anything else. So we need to be very thankful for what we've achieved in our life. And for me, I just love helping people, and I think helping people has come out of this being locked down. So that's for me, realizing that most of us have everything we need. We've got our health, we've got our loved ones, we've got a roof over our head, we've got food in the cupboard.
And beautiful weather. How could you have a worse? You couldn't have a better time in lockdown with the lovely weather we've got as well. It's just it's amazing to wake up to it.
And it's to use this time wisely is the most important thing as well.
Absolutely.
Don't flitter it away. Use it. Plan what you want to achieve when we come out of this. Whether it's work, whether it's fun, whatever it is, but plan what we want to do when we come out of this. And it'll help people not flitter away the money they're going to get, or not misuse their time, so that's for me. Me.
Don't buy stuff that you don't need online just because you think you might have an extra couple of pound at the minute and you're not spending money elsewhere. I think, as just to echo what Mary said, be grateful for what you have, because there are people who are going to be stuck in another place and can't get home, and they're stuck without the people that they really want around them. Use the time wisely, learn some new skills. If it's something as simple as work on your tax returns, because most people that I know, if their tax returns are due at the end of January, they do them online. They're turning up with their accountants, in the mid-January. And accountants don't like that. So even something as simple as that, get them done now, because the tax year is just finished. Tax year finished sort of a couple of weeks ago, 1st of April. Get your tax returns done. Get ahead of yourself. Do a financial review, because a lot of people have no idea where they're at in terms of financial review. Whether you have a property portfolio, whether you're just in a job and you want to just have an income and expenditure sheet, it's worth doing it. You've got the time to do it now. As I say, study. If things are not working for you, don't do them. If things that are not working for you that you need to do and they're still not working for you, find a coach or a mentor that's going to help you to try and achieve what you want to achieve. Fix the things that aren't working, because maybe the things that you think aren't working maybe just need a small tweak, but you can't see it. So get some outside opinion. As I say, get a coach. We've had to get a coach. We didn't have to get a coach. We wanted to get a coach, and it's worked very well for us. Actually, Brian, who has been one of your guys in the podcast. I think especially at a time like this when people are confused and there's a lot of uncertainty around, and yourself, from a business coaching point of view, people need some help and some outside opinion, especially because there's a lot of stuff going on in your head at the minute.
100%.
And so many different people's opinions and
because all the experts, all the experts are on Facebook,
of course. And respond to messages like that as well. If you've got that much time in your hands, brilliant.
There's so many medical experts, scientists, and guys that live next door to you, and you always wondered what they did, and now you're realizing actually he's a medical expert and he's a science expert. And
a joiner.
And a joiner. So there's a lot of shit around at the minute, and it's a time when you're spending maybe too much time on there, and you're trying to make head or tail of what's going on with all the uncertainty and whatnot. But
I think surrounding yourself with the right people.
And that can happen online.
I'm going to add something for anybody who's employed out there. If you're employed and you're currently on furlough, or you're currently working from home and you've got a bit of extra time, go to the research the business that you're in, and get prepared to add some value to your employer, because anybody who's a business owner at the minute is dealing with multiple things. They're not, maybe some people like myself, because we're small, we're thinking about growth, right? But a lot of people are just thinking about fighting off battles. So if you're an employee in a company, go and learn some skills that could add value to your employer about growth or marketing or something. Upgrade your skill set, and if you bring that to them when they reopen and you can implement that straight away and you know it's going to work, I guarantee you're going to be in line for a promotion, or you're going to be in line, because everybody's just sitting in the garden with their beers the minute if you're on furlough. If you can upgrade your skill set and bring some value to your employer, you're going to go really far.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jim Rohn used to say you don't get paid for the hour that you put in, you get paid for the value that you bring to the hour. So if you can learn some new skills now, and by the time you go back to work or back into running your business, if you're going to be more valuable either to your employee or your customers, you're going to potentially have the opportunities to earn more money. And it's thinking outside the box as well. There's a lot of businesses that are like, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. You know, maybe somebody that has a van that he's a joiner or a bricklayer or a plasterer or whatever. The van's normally full of tools. People are now cleaning out their vans and going doing deliveries for pharmacies to people that are vulnerable. So, you know, or delivering food, you know, make use of it, or, you know, delivering pizzas for pizza restaurants, or, you know, takeaway restaurants, whatever.
Happy
You know,
days.
use your time wisely. Don't sit in front of Netflix for the next few months.
Tempting as it is.
As tempting as it is, yeah.
Watch that movie though, Chris.
Yeah, watch Contagion. Yeah.
I was going to say, whenever you said, Chris mentioned about being grateful last week, I was like, I was like, was that before or after the off license opened again? a lot of people are starting to feel a lot of gratitude last Thursday or Friday.
Off license aren't open to Ballymena.
Oh, they're not?
Well,
No,
supermarkets,
supermarkets, but not off license.
Oh, they're all open. All the wine marks in Belfast opened again.
Yeah, I expected them at least to open over Easter. So whether that's a decision they've made themselves, I don't know, but they can open.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it, the time. A lot of great stuff in there, especially towards the end for any employers or employees even. So thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
No problem. Good to see you, Chris.
Soon.
I'll be seeing you guys soon.
Yeah, see you soon.